Statistics say that around 7% of children struggle with social skills, making it hard for them to connect with peers, express themselves, or feel comfortable in group settings. That number might seem small to some, but if you're a parent of one of these children, you know that behind every percentage point lies a very real story, one filled with challenges, heartache, and quiet hope. It's more than just numbers. It's every single day feeling like a walk through an emotional minefield. When I first noticed it with my own child, it wasn't some grand, clear moment. It was small and subtle at first. Birthday parties where they would cling to me, unable to join in with the other children, or playground trips that ended up with them standing at the sidelines, eyes following the other kids with a mixture of longing and hesitation. I remember one time so vividly. It was a school field trip to a local science museum. All the kids were buzzing with excitement, voices ringing out, and laughter bouncing off the walls. But my child, they stood by me, eyes wide and anxious, hands tightly gripping my sleeve. The whole bus ride there, they sat quiet, eyes glued to the floor. "It's okay, you'll make friends," I kept saying, trying to ease the tension in their little shoulders. But I could see it. Their small hands clenched into fists, their breathing shallow. The weight of those words seemed to settle over both of us, but I still tried to reassure them, even if deep down I wasn't convinced myself. My heart broke 1,000 times over. Each time they looked longingly at kids laughing together. Each time they walked up to a group, standing just a few inches too far, saying nothing, hoping somehow they'd get noticed. But they never did. I watched as they became an invisible presence, a ghost hovering just out of reach, waiting for an invitation that never came. Parent-teacher conferences became painful. The teachers would say things like, "They're so smart, so creative, but they just don't seem to click with other kids." Those words, meant to console, only felt like gentle cuts, reminders of what they lacked, of what I felt I had failed to give them. And at night, lying next to them, they'd sometimes whisper, "Why don't I have friends, Mom? What's wrong with me?" I didn't know how to answer that, so I just hold them close, feeling their quiet sadness seep into me, wishing I had answers or a way to fix it. I tried everything. I signed them up for clubs, camps, sports teams, anything that promised social interaction. But it felt like every attempt was another reminder of their loneliness. Every soccer game, they'd stand a little away from the team huddle, clapping at the wrong moments, unsure of the rules of social play. And every birthday invitation that didn't come was like another piece of evidence piling up, proving that they were different. One time, I watched as they tried to join a game of tag at recess. They ran over, hesitant but eager, and just as they started to follow the group, the other kids scattered, laughing and running, unaware of the one child left standing there, hands open, wondering why they weren't a part of the fun. They looked back at me, confusion and hurt in their eyes, and I felt this raw ache grip my heart. It wasn't just hard on them. It wore me down too. I'd sit up at night scrolling through articles, searching for answers on how to help them build friendships, how to teach social skills to kids who felt so deeply, so quietly. I'd watch videos, read guides, and scour parenting forums, hoping for some magical solution. But each time I tried something new, each playdate that ended in strained silence, each forced social interaction, it felt like I was only making things worse. One day, after a particularly hard day at school, they looked at me, tears glistening in their eyes. "Mom," they said, voice barely a whisper, "I'm just not like them. I don't fit." It was a simple statement, but the finality of it made my heart feel like it was being squeezed by an iron grip. How could a child so young feel such deep isolation, such profound loneliness? In public, I'd plaster on a smile, trying to act like everything was okay, pretending like my child's social isolation wasn't tearing me apart inside. But behind closed doors, I'd cry into my pillow, feeling helpless, feeling like I had failed as a parent. The guilt gnawed at me, a relentless ache that didn't ease. I'd think back to my own childhood, my friends, the effortless connections, and wonder why it wasn't the same for my child. Why was this so hard? It got to the point where I started avoiding certain events, parties, and gatherings. I couldn't bear the pitying looks, the subtle questions, the quiet judgment of other parents who didn't understand. Watching other kids run around laughing, forming bonds so easily, it felt like a cruel reminder of what we were missing. It was a constant wound, one that never seemed to heal, just kept getting reopened every time we ventured out into the world. And then there was the day they came home from school, silent and withdrawn, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. I sat down next to them, hoping they'd open up, Tell me what was wrong. After a long silence, they finally whispered, "They called me weird, Mom. They said I'm strange." My heart shattered in that moment, the pain in their voice a knife to my soul. How do you comfort a child who feels like an outsider, who feels like they don't belong? I wanted so desperately to tell them that it would get better, that they would find their place, find their people. But in that moment, all I could do was hold them, my own tears mingling with theirs, wishing more than anything that I could take their pain away. But I couldn't. All I could do was be there. Be a steady presence in a world that felt so lonely for them. Each day became a balancing act, a careful tiptoe around their fragile self-esteem, trying to encourage them without pushing too hard, trying to support them without overstepping. I found myself clinging to hope in small victories, a smile from a classmate, a laugh shared with a peer, tiny glimmers of connection that felt like rays of light in an otherwise dark, cloudy sky. But the journey was a constant struggle, a battle against invisible walls that kept them apart from the world around them. And as a parent, that was the hardest part. Knowing that no matter how much I loved them, no matter how fiercely I wanted to protect them, I couldn't shield them from the loneliness they felt. The only thing I could do was keep trying, keep hoping, and keep loving them with every ounce of my being, holding on to the belief that one day, they would find their place in this world. Every late-night tear, every moment of quiet pain, every small step forward, it all became a part of our story, a story of a parent's love and a child's search for belonging. After that difficult conversation, holding my child close as they voiced the pain of feeling different, I knew things couldn't stay as they were. I couldn't watch them navigate life with that heavy weight on their shoulders, feeling like they didn't fit in, believing they were weird or strange. It wasn't just hurting them, it was hurting both of us. And I could feel that it was time to step forward and find a way, no matter how small or uncertain, to help them find their place in this world. I started by looking at what I could control, and that was our own environment. Home became the safe space, a haven where they could be their true selves without fear of judgment. I knew that social skills were something that could be learned with practice, just like any other skill, and I decided that practice would begin with me. Every evening we'd spend time doing little activities that, while simple, helped build confidence. From taking turns in board games to practicing greetings or even making eye contact in playful settings, I found ways to weave social interactions into our daily routines. But as much as I wanted to shield them from discomfort, I knew I needed to gently nudge them beyond our living room. So I took a leap of faith and signed up for a family event in our community, a neighborhood picnic that was known for its relaxed, family-friendly atmosphere. It felt like a manageable starting point, a place where they could see other kids interacting, but without the overwhelming energy of a large crowd. We got there, blankets spread out, snacks at the ready. I didn't push them to run off and play, but I encouraged them to observe, to watch how the other kids interacted. At first, they stayed close, eyes darting around, seeming nervous but curious. Then a little girl from our block came over and, to my surprise, invited my child to play a simple game of catch. There was hesitation in their eyes, a flicker of fear, but they went, glancing back at me for reassurance. My heart swelled with both pride and fear, wondering if this first small leap would lead to success or another heartbreak. It was slow at first, an exchange of a few words, a couple of awkward tosses, but it was something. And as they laughed, a small sound but genuine, I felt the tiniest glimmer of hope. Maybe this was a beginning, a tiny door opening to the world they so badly wanted to be part of. The next step was enrolling them in a group activity, something structured but not overwhelming. I looked into classes and workshops specifically designed to build social skills in kids, ones where there was guidance but also room to explore on their own terms. We ended up finding a small art class that met once a week, focused on creating and sharing ideas in a supportive group environment. It wasn't a large, noisy gathering, but rather a small circle where every child had a chance to contribute. At first, they barely spoke, glancing around as if waiting for permission to join in. But week by week, I watched them grow more comfortable, picking up on subtle cues, speaking up a little more each time, even sharing their work with a quiet confidence that made my heart swell. Through these sessions, I began to realize how much of social skills come down to small moments of connection, the little exchanges that, when added together, create a feeling of belonging. I had always thought it was about finding a best friend or a big group to fit into, but now I saw that even one connection at a time, one small smile, one shared laugh, could slowly build the social comfort they were craving. As things progressed, I kept looking for ways to build on this foundation. We started practicing social scripts at home. Simple, everyday phrases they could use to start conversations or join in with others. Hi, can I join you? Or that looks like fun. Can I play too? Practicing these at home helped them feel prepared for real-world interactions. It wasn't about forcing them to change who they were, but giving them tools to navigate social situations with confidence. One of the hardest parts of this journey was learning to let go of my own expectations. I had to realize that their social path would look different than mine, and that was okay. They didn't need to be the life of the party or have 100 friends. What mattered was that they felt safe, that they knew how to build connections at their own pace, and that they could find joy in even the smallest interactions. I also found that celebrating the little wins was crucial. Every time they shared a story from school about a small interaction, a laugh with a classmate, or a moment in group activities where they felt comfortable, we celebrated. We'd talk about it at dinner, making a big deal out of every small step forward. These moments, though they may have seemed minor to others, were milestones for us. The turning point came when they joined a school club, a small group for kids interested in nature. It was the first time they willingly chose to participate in something social. I watched from a distance as they walked into that room, clutching their backpack, eyes scanning the faces inside. But they stayed and they joined in, and over time, they found themselves surrounded by kids who shared their quiet love for nature. They weren't suddenly the loudest or most outgoing child in the room, but they found friends who appreciated them for who they were. They were finally seen and they were finally accepted. Watching this transformation wasn't easy, but every moment of progress felt like a weight lifting off my heart. I knew there would still be challenges and hard days, but I also knew we had made it over the hardest part. We had found our rhythm, and we had discovered that social skills could be learned, practiced, and strengthened, just like any other skill. Through it all, one resource that helped immensely was the book titled The Social Butterfly Builder. Help your child develop strong social skills. It became more than just a book. It became a guide and a source of comfort for both of us. Inside, I found practical steps that made real, meaningful differences in my child's confidence and social abilities. The book offered insights I hadn't found anywhere else, tailored to parents like me, who felt the weight of watching their child struggle with social interactions. It helped me understand that the journey to building social skills wasn't about forcing change, but fostering growth in a way that honored who my child was at their core. I would highly recommend grabbing a copy of The Social Butterfly Builder. Help your child develop strong social skills. Available as a digital copy on LibriFFY.com, link in the description. This book didn't just give us advice. It offered a path forward, a way to nurture social growth without losing sight of what made my child unique. For any parent struggling with a similar situation, this book could be the starting point of a new, hopeful journey. The statistics paint a daunting picture. Parenting is the most joyful yet challenging journey many embark upon, and raising toddlers can feel like taming a storm. According to recent studies, parents report feeling overwhelmed or burned out at an alarming rate during the toddler years, with over 60% of parents experiencing severe fatigue and frustration. Toddlers are full of energy and curiosity, learning and growing every day. But with that growth comes intense emotions, meltdowns, and behaviors that push even the calmest parents to their limits. As a parent, I thought I was prepared. I read all the books, listened to advice from seasoned parents, and even worked on my patience. But nothing could prepare me for the constant whirlwind my life would become, nor the feeling of struggling to hold on to my own sense of calm. When my child was born, everything felt magical. That tiny sleeping bundle in my arms seemed like a promise of peace and love, and I felt I had all the strength I needed to give them a perfect life. Those first months flew by, full of late-night feedings and sleepless nights, yet it was still a dream come true. But then came the toddler years, and it felt as though that sweet, gentle baby had transformed into a force of nature. It was like living with a miniature tornado, and nothing seemed to quell the storm. Every day was full of constant energy, endless demands, and tantrums I couldn't begin to understand. I remember one night so vividly that it still makes my heart ache. It was a particularly long day. From the moment we woke up, everything seemed to go wrong. My toddler woke up grumpy, refused breakfast, threw toys across the room, and screamed at the slightest inconvenience. I tried to stay calm, telling myself this was just a phase, that it would pass. But that day, nothing could soothe the storm inside my child, and as the hours wore on, I felt my own patience slipping away. By dinner time, I was completely drained. I prepared a meal, trying to make it something I knew they would enjoy. But as soon as I set the plate down, my child threw it onto the floor, food scattering everywhere. In that moment, I felt defeated. The exhaustion, the frustration, the sense of failing as a parent, it all came crashing down. I walked into the other room and sat on the floor, my head in my hands, feeling the tears stream down my face. I felt like I had lost myself, that I was no longer the patient, loving person I once was. I was simply someone trying to survive another day in this whirlwind of emotions and chaos. I started to wonder if I was enough. I loved my child with everything in me, but I felt so small, so powerless against their endless energy and unpredictable moods. As I sat there, I felt a strange sense of isolation. I had heard stories of other parents going through similar struggles, but it felt like I was the only one who couldn't manage. I wondered what other parents did differently, why it seemed like others handled this phase so much better. The self-doubt was crushing. I felt ashamed, as if by feeling this overwhelmed, I was somehow failing my child. And the guilt, that was perhaps the worst of it all. I felt guilty for losing my patience, for needing a break, for not being able to handle it all with grace. The nights were the hardest. After I would finally get my child to sleep, I'd sit alone in the quiet, feeling the weight of the day pressing down on me. I'd scroll through social media, seeing other parents posting happy photos and sharing stories of their adorable, well-behaved children, and I would wonder if I was doing something wrong. I questioned my parenting constantly. Was I too lenient? Too strict? Was I showing enough love or too much discipline? The uncertainty made every decision feel monumental, and the fear of making a mistake loomed over me every day. There were moments of pure love and joy too, but even those would bring tears to my eyes. Watching my toddler play or seeing them sleep peacefully after a day of chaos filled me with love so strong it hurt. A reminder of why I was doing all of this, why I kept going. But that love was also a reminder of how high the stakes were, of how much I wanted to do everything right. And somehow that only made the hard moments feel harder, the failures seem more profound. People often told me, it'll get better. Just a phase. But that advice, though meant to be comforting, only added to my frustration. Yes, it might get better someday, but that didn't make the present moment any easier. I felt like I was drowning, like every day was a test of endurance that I was failing. The daily tantrums, the sleepless nights, the endless energy. It was a cycle I couldn't break free from, and it felt as though my life had been consumed by this tiny, relentless storm. Looking back now, I realized that I wasn't alone in my struggles. There are countless parents who feel this same exhaustion, this same sense of losing themselves. But in the thick of it, I felt like I was fighting a battle no one else understood. It was a time of loneliness and self-doubt, of desperately wanting to be the best parent possible yet feeling like I was falling short every single day. And each morning I would wake up, bracing myself for another day of chaos, knowing that I would try my best, even if it didn't feel like enough. I loved my child fiercely, and that love was what kept me going, even in the darkest moments. But love didn't erase the exhaustion or the frustration, and it didn't make the tantrums any easier to handle. All I could do was hold on to that love, hoping it would be enough to carry me through this storm, to help me find my way back to myself. As the days continued, I realized something had to change. The exhaustion, frustration, and endless self-doubt were taking a toll on me, and I couldn't go on like this. I wasn't just a parent. I was a person who needed balance and peace. But how could I even start finding that in the middle of the chaos? I knew I needed help, some sort of guidance to help me handle my toddler's boundless energy and my own emotional burnout. My first steps toward finding balance and calm were small, but each one felt like a tiny victory in a storm that had once seemed impossible to tame. The first thing I did was reach out for support. I joined an online parenting group, a place where other parents shared their struggles, their tips, and most importantly, their stories. Hearing from others who were also overwhelmed yet determined gave me a sense of hope. These parents didn't have everything figured out, but they knew the importance of community, of sharing insights and small victories. Little by little, I started implementing advice from these groups. For instance, I learned to take quick breaks whenever I felt myself getting overwhelmed, even if it was just for a moment to breathe and reset. These small pauses helped me gather myself before diving back into parenting, and I found that I was more patient and responsive after each one. Another early step that truly helped was adjusting my expectations. I had been expecting myself to be a perfect parent, to have all the answers and never make mistakes. But accepting that parenting was about learning, adjusting, and forgiving myself brought a small but powerful shift. I stopped comparing myself to others or expecting my toddler to act like the calm children I saw online. Instead, I learned to focus on what was within my control and embrace the fact that each day would bring new challenges. Realizing that I didn't have to be a perfect parent to be a good one gave me a sense of freedom. This helped me let go of some of the pressure I had been placing on myself. One of the most effective changes was establishing routines, simple yet consistent ones. It was surprising to see how much of a difference it made for both me and my toddler. I started with a bedtime routine that became our special time together. Every night, we'd have a short, calming activity, followed by brushing teeth, reading a book, and quiet cuddling. The routine helped both of us wind down, and it set a tone of peace that we carried into the night. In the mornings, I introduced a simple ritual where we greeted the day together, stretching and talking about what we might do. This consistency brought a rhythm to our day that felt manageable, giving my child a sense of security and me a feeling of control. Then I began learning to communicate with my toddler in a way that validated their emotions while also setting boundaries. Instead of reacting to tantrums with frustration or attempting to quiet them immediately, I practiced listening and speaking calmly. I realized that my child was also struggling, navigating big feelings they didn't fully understand, and acknowledging those feelings went a long way. I would kneel down, get on their level, and say things like, "I see you're upset. Let's figure this out together." It was hard at first, and it didn't work perfectly every time, but over time it transformed our interactions. The tantrums didn't disappear completely, but they became less intense, and I found ways to respond without feeling overwhelmed. Incorporating simple mindfulness practices into our routine also helped tremendously. During particularly chaotic days, I started guiding my toddler in gentle breathing exercises. At first, it was mostly me modeling deep breaths and encouraging my child to join in, but soon it became something we both relied on when things got too intense. Sometimes we'd sit on the floor and breathe together, counting to 4 with each breath, and I could feel the tension ease in both of us. It wasn't always a perfect solution, but it was a tool that helped us create moments of calm amidst the storm. Another key part of this journey was giving myself grace and allowing myself the space to recharge. One of the best things I did was finding moments to practice self-care. It was tempting to ignore my needs, thinking my toddler had to come first in everything. But I realized that when I was burned out, I couldn't be fully present or responsive. So I began carving out small pockets of time for myself. I started setting up quiet activities my toddler could do independently for a few minutes while I sipped tea or read a few pages of a book. These little moments were small acts of self-kindness that restored my patience, and soon I could feel a renewed sense of energy I hadn't felt in ages. Support from my partner and family was also invaluable. I learned to communicate openly about my struggles, asking for help when I needed it. Sometimes it meant a family member taking my toddler to the park while I took a nap, or simply having someone to listen as I vented my frustrations. This support became my safety net, giving me the strength to keep going on the hardest days. But perhaps the most transformative part of my journey was discovering the Toddler Tornado Tamer: Proven Strategies for Positive Parenting in the Early Years. This book wasn't just a resource, it felt like a lifeline. Through its practical guidance and empathetic approach, I learned actionable strategies that fit perfectly into my life as a parent. The book showed me how to approach parenting with both confidence and compassion, and each chapter felt like a roadmap out of the chaos and into a place of connection and calm. The guidance offered within those pages wasn't about perfection. It was about building a solid foundation of understanding and patience. With the Toddler Tornado Tamer, I found ways to reconnect with my toddler in a way that felt natural and authentic. The techniques were easy to incorporate, and over time, I saw real changes in how my toddler and I interacted. There was less frustration, more understanding, and a stronger bond that brought peace into our daily lives. This book offered everything I needed, from managing my toddler's behavior to fostering a sense of security and joy in our relationship. If you're feeling overwhelmed and unsure of where to start, I encourage you to explore The Toddler Tornado Tamer. This book was the cornerstone of my journey back to myself, a guide that truly helped me find peace and strength. It's available for a digital download on LibriFFY.com, link in the description. Grab your copy and discover the path to positive, empowered parenting that can make all the difference in your life.